transatlántica. Ella es doctora en Ingeniería Multimedia, es profesora en Educación Superior, es cofundadora del Observatorio de Comunicación y Videojuegos y Entretenimiento fundado por la Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona, la Universidad de Vic. Es investigadora en las áreas de User Research, Game Studies, aprendizaje basado en juegos, gamificación, pero gamificación de la chida, Serious Games, diseño de interacción y de interfaces. Es evaluadora de la Agencia Portuguesa de Evaluación y Acreditación, A3S, y en la Agencia de Certificación en Innovación Española, ACIE, y en la Agencia Estatal de Investigación AIE en España. Además, próximamente la tendremos acá en la Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana haciendo una estancia de investigación. Hasta te vamos a tramitar tu credencial para que puedas entrar. Es un gustazo verte, es un gustazo tenerte aquí.
Gracias.
Pues el escenario es tuyo. Me quito mi...
Gracias. Gracias, Blanca, gracias a todos los que están por aquí presentes y para escuchar este tema, que no es un tema agradable, un poco controvertido, pero bueno, les voy a compartir mi pantalla para que podamos ver algunas diapos y hacerlo un poquito más ameno. Bien, pues como decía, voy a hablar de un tema que es un tema pues complicado, ¿no? Y como dice el título, hemos dedicado tiempo para explorar este tema relacionado con lo que es participación de las mujeres en la industria y también todo lo que es la parte del acoso laboral, ¿no? ¿Por qué es interesante hablar de esto? Bueno, todo el mundo lo sabe. En 2020 México ha posicionado como el líder latinoamericano en el mercado de videojuegos. Incluso en 2021 también ocupa un lugar bastante importante con ingresos bastante altos, más o menos estimados en los 1.900 millones. Ha habido muchos factores obviamente que han hecho este impulso del mercado, de este consumo que haya crecido. Por un lado, todo el tema de la pandemia ha hecho que crezca mucho todo esto, lo cual ha creado un aumento bastante notable, sobre todo la parte de lo que son la frecuencia de uso de los juegos. Y para finales más o menos 2021 ya se hablaba de 73 millones de jugadores en videojuegos, esto según un portal conocido, famoso, llamado Statista, en el cual pues se menciona que el 43% de las mujeres son jugadoras. De ahí que haya un interés, ¿no?, en saber qué está pasando con las mujeres en la industria, cuántas están trabajando también. Y digamos que pues así a grandes rasgos las grandes ciudades son las que concentran creación o crecimiento de lo que son empresas de videojuegos. Aquí se mencionan algunas simplemente por ponerlas, pero digamos que básicamente estas grandes ciudades son esos puntos. ¿Por qué? Porque facilitan ese intercambio de conocimientos tácitos, que hay unos entornos urbanos, el acceso obviamente a proveedores que son necesarios para las empresas de la industria, el acceso a autónomos, a diferentes empleados, y dentro pues de estos empleados incluimos a todas estas mujeres que están trabajando ahora en el contenido, en el desarrollo, dentro de la creación de juegos. ¿Por qué es importante el papel de la mujer en la industria? No solamente en México, estamos a nivel mundial, pues básicamente porque hay una diversidad, ¿no?, de puntos de vista cuando se desarrolla un juego. Mientras más puntos de vista haya, hay más valor, se aporta más valor al equipo. Los equipos dentro de los equipos pues es crucial que haya diferentes puntos de vista, pues no solo para innovar, para producir juegos, sino para satisfacer demandas en el mercado, ¿no? Y bueno, pues una mujer incluso podría dar algún pequeño detalle que puede ser favorecedor para ese 43% que hemos comentado antes, que son las que juegan. Sin embargo, como en otras partes del mundo, como decía, pues las mujeres siguen siendo un bajo porcentaje de los empleados en la industria. Esto no ocurre solamente en México, ocurre también aquí en España o en otras partes. Aquí en España, por ejemplo, tenemos solo un 11% de mujeres trabajando en la industria. En Francia crece un poquito más el número, pero seguimos teniendo un bajo número de mujeres. Y además encontramos con que muchas de estas chicas que están trabajando ahí pues sufren de acoso laboral o en ocasiones lamentablemente de acoso sexual en el trabajo. Lamentablemente porque estas actitudes están arraigadas en la historia, ¿no? En toda esta historia que incluso estas se han ido normalizando, estas actividades, a pesar de que existan leyes, a pesar de que se intente cada vez mejorar la situación de las empresas, pues no acaba de ser de todo un ambiente, digamos, óptimo, libre de sexismo, que sigue siendo frecuente en la industria del videojuego, igual que en otras áreas tecnológicas. Vamos a dar algunas pinceladas de estos datos. En mayo de 2019, seguramente les suena este caso, 150 empleados de la empresa de Riot Games abandonaron la empresa por demandas de acoso. Fue la protesta más grande en la historia de la industria del videojuego. Después hubo una huelga que fue seguida por muchas empleadas, ex empleadas, que presentaron además demandas alegando discriminación y acoso por motivos de género. Un poquito más tarde, en julio de 2020, vimos a empleados de alto rango de Ubisoft renunciar a la empresa cuando se hicieron públicas varias acusaciones. Estas acusaciones salieron a la luz en Twitter, pero también en varios medios de comunicación, principales medios de comunicación, en donde había acusaciones sobre acoso sexual, sobre abuso laboral, sobre conductas indebidas en la empresa, que fueron encubiertas e ignoradas por los directivos constantemente. En cuanto a este caso, pues no puedo hablar de un paralelismo con México, por eso he puesto estos ejemplos, porque en la prensa mexicana, tal como hemos estado mirando, no se menciona nada relacionado con este tema en las empresas mexicanas. Sin embargo, esto no quiere decir que no ocurra. Datos tenemos muy pocos, no existe un censo oficial disponible sobre la cantidad de mujeres que trabajan en la industria del videojuego en México, ni tampoco existe una estimación de la cantidad de mujeres que trabajan incluso en ámbitos de tecnología, ya que es algo mucho más general. Hay datos en cuanto a la Organización Internacional del Trabajo que menciona que más de la mitad de la población de México se dedica a una economía informal, siendo las mujeres, en este caso un 58,8%, las más propensas a tener trabajos informales y sobre todo a realizar trabajos no remunerados. Además, dentro de esa fuerza laboral continua, rezagada con respecto a la de los hombres, las mujeres pues siguen estando por debajo del promedio. Esto según la OECD, que es la Organización para la Cooperación y la Fuerza y Desarrollo Económicos. Hay un ligero aumento en los últimos 15 años en la participación de las mujeres en la fuerza laboral en México, pero pues aún así sigue siendo un dato muy inferior, es decir, estos datos son para darnos una pincelada de la información, de la poca información que tenemos y de lo poco que hay en cuanto a la industria. México sigue siendo inferior a la de otros países de América Latina en cuanto a fuerza laboral en mujeres. Y además, otro dato que se logra obtener a través de organismos fiables institucionales, que en este caso también vuelve a ser un dato de la OECD, es el que en 2019 a las mujeres se les pagó un 18,8 menos que a los hombres, según los ingresos promedios a tiempo completo. Ahí podemos ver que México cuenta desde 2007 con una ley general de acceso de las mujeres a una vida libre de violencia. exactamente en concreto en el capítulo 2 dedicado a la violencia laboral, en el artículo 15 se especifican los efectos del acoso laboral. Y paralelamente en 2008 se creó una fiscalía especializada en violencia contra mujer y trata de personas, que se conoce mejor como el FEBIMINTRA, que es la Fiscalía Especial para los Delitos de Violencia contra las Mujeres y Trata de Personas, en la que básicamente esta ley lo que hace es regular la investigación y persecución de delitos federales contra la mujer. Aquí se incluyen cosas como lo que sería la violencia en el lugar de trabajo, que es algo que nos interesa a nosotros para el tema. Cabe señalar que los protocolos que se han elaborado para atender estos casos en concretos, en casos de trabajo, y que están registrados por el gobierno de la República Mexicana, no contemplan circunstancias que sean más allá de un espacio físico de trabajo. Es decir, no están actualizadas a los modos actuales de trabajo. Es decir, si tú trabajas a distancia o como mujer, pues esto no lo cubre. O todo lo que son trabajos freelance, que normalmente son los más requeridos o muchas veces utilizados en la industria de México, por lo que no contempla efectivamente o específicamente las necesidades de muchas mujeres en la industria. Y bueno, esta situación que hemos visto nosotros, porque hemos empezado a investigar con entrevistas que ahora comentaré más en profundidad que hemos estado realizando, lleva a muchas mujeres a conformarse para adaptarse a la situación. De hecho, hay algunos estudios a nivel psicológico que hablan de esto, en cuanto a que muchas personas cuando sufren de algún acoso laboral, y aquí no solamente estamos hablando de mujeres, también de hombres, tienden a ser bastante conformistas, ¿no? Casos en los que pues vemos, por ejemplo, un artista digital que afirma, bueno, es algo con lo que lamentablemente tienes que vivir todos los días, pero pues si quiero continuar en la industria o quiero seguir estando aquí, pues me aguanto y sigo soportándolo, ¿no? Pero esto obviamente en detrimento de su autoestima. O tenemos otro caso como el que vemos aquí en la pantalla, que es el de Ana, que es una creadora de contenido de Twitch, que menciona que pues, ha vivido acoso y que lo ha visto en el área de streaming sobre todo, y que bueno, es un proceso para ella difícil, pero acaba adaptándose lamentablemente porque siempre se va a encontrar con ese tipo de gente en la industria de los juegos. Este, básicamente, con este panorama que he puesto, nosotros nos hemos dedicado desde el Observatorio de Comunicación, Videojuegos y Entretenimiento de la Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona a estudiar y explorar, sobre todo aquí resalto la palabra explorar porque no estamos llevando a cabo un estudio todavía en profundidad. Estamos explorando esa participación de las mujeres, intentando saber qué es lo que está pasando, si realmente sufren discriminación, si hay acoso sexual en la industria, con qué consecuencias, con qué impactos en su satisfacción laboral, sobre todo, que esto es algo muy importante de cara a que si no están de alguna manera motivadas, pues esto va a impactar directamente en su trabajo y se verá pues la empresa de alguna manera pues afectada. A partir de aquí buscamos sobre todo ver qué está pasando, ¿para qué? Para intentar evitar que no se sigan perpetuando aún más no solo de esta desigualdad de género, sino que se sigan normalizando estas cosas que están pasando. Y bueno, previamente a esto hay muchos estudios, como ya decía, en otras partes del mundo esto ya se ha visto, ya se ha ido estudiando toda la parte de la discriminación de género en el lugar de trabajo, y pues nosotros queríamos acabar también de explorarlo dentro de México. Así que la participación en este caso que empezamos a explorar parte basado en estas hipótesis que hemos querido revisar, es decir, saber si realmente las mujeres que trabajan en la industria dicen o sufren esta discriminación laboral o sexual en algún caso, pues por qué no también explorarlo. Si las mujeres que trabajan en la industria mexicana de videojuegos vivieron más casos durante la pandemia o fue algo, pues, es decir, en comparación con la situación anterior fue exactamente lo mismo. Y finalmente también que dentro de esto pues quisimos ver si las mujeres que están trabajando en la industria mexicana se sienten afectadas en cuanto a satisfacción laboral y se afecta su autoconfianza profesional. Esto va a ser lo que comentaba antes, que en varios estudios psicológicos vemos que mucha gente tiende a ese conformismo, a decir, bueno, no importa, lo elimino, hago como que no pasa nada, ¿no? La estrategia del avestruz, escondo la cabeza y ya está en la tierra y no pasa nada. Y precisamente por eso nos interesaba esta tercera hipótesis para ver si este punto que dicen los psicólogos les ayuda a evitar que les afecte directamente. Como decía, es un trabajo que vamos haciendo. Hemos empezado a explorar lo que algunos de los datos que mostraré aquí son lo que hemos empezado a explorar. Nos basamos en un cuestionario que para medir la discriminación de género y el acoso sexual. Es un cuestionario que fue diseñado hace ya tiempo y que se ha utilizado en diferentes empresas e incluso a nivel gubernamental se ha utilizado en otros casos para ver de qué forma se está viviendo el acoso. Y en la satisfacción laboral también lo que estamos haciendo es medirla a través de un ítem muy concreto como se utiliza en otros estudios anteriores. Bien, aquí tenemos un panorama de las primeras 10 personas que entrevistamos a raíz de que al pasar un cuestionario detectamos personas que sí que habían vivido estas situaciones dentro de la industria. Entonces nos centramos en entrevistar a estas personas para ver, ampliar un poco más la situación, para de alguna manera representar qué es lo que estaba pasando. Normalmente en lo que fue las personas con las que identificamos que habían sufrido tanto discriminación de género como acoso sexual durante los últimos 12 meses, que es esta tabla que vemos aquí. De las 40 profesionales que respondieron a nuestra encuesta, solamente hemos entrevistado de momento a 10. Hemos cambiado los nombres, es decir, para preservar las identidades. Los nombres que ven aquí no son los correctos. Y a partir de aquí pues voy a explicar un poco más lo que hemos encontrado, los primeros resultados, ¿no? de estas encuestas y entrevistas. Podemos decir como primer resultado que las mujeres han sufrido discriminación de género en los lugares de trabajo, es decir, casos como que pues algunas veces se les da preferencia a que algún hombre desarrolle el trabajo antes que ellas. Y en pocos casos hemos detectado lo que es el acoso sexual. Esta situación parece que empeoró durante la pandemia y algunos participantes pues nos dijeron que a pesar de aceptar toda esta parte del autoconformismo que mencionaba, pues sí que se sienten a nivel profesional muy afectados o afectadas por en cuanto a su motivación, y obviamente esto impacta en su rendimiento en el trabajo y hay menos satisfacción laboral. A través también de los resultados podemos observar que hay una tendencia en las respuestas a que las mujeres no cuentan con un nivel socioeconómico, digamos, muy bajo, presumiblemente en comparación si pensamos, ¿no? En la mayoría de la población mexicana, o sea, hacemos un paralelismo, podemos ver que, bueno, son personas que han estudiado algo relacionado con tecnología, han logrado entrar en la industria. Entonces todas estas, también muchas de estas mujeres viven en ciudades grandes, lo que es consistente con un alcance tecnológico que se da en áreas urbanas, y por tanto no estamos hablando de personas que tengan un nivel socioeconómico bajo. A pesar de que la ley es muy clara, otro de los datos, y que considera que los comportamientos tanto de acoso laboral como acoso sexual son punibles. Hay una falta de líderes en la industria que aboguen por un entorno de trabajo que sea respetuoso para las mujeres en el sector de los videojuegos. Sí, los estudios, por ejemplo, como una sugerencia, contaran con figuras de autoridad que se esforzaran por establecer algunas pautas claras de comportamiento, o que intentaran que hubiera un comportamiento impecable, o que investigaran alguna denuncia de acoso contra los perpetradores, pues en este caso, pues posiblemente, como ha pasado en otros sitios, esto disminuiría. Otro de los resultados es que se discute o se afirma más bien que muchos de los casos que se han vivido en las empresas, en algunas de estas empresas en México, pues no se actúa o se actúa de manera pasiva, ¿no? Es decir, pues simplemente no se le hace frente, se esconde y por tanto, pues esto a la larga crea incidentes o aumenta niveles de hostilidad entre los empleados, y esto pues básicamente acaba siendo o convirtiéndose en una característica central de un ambiente de trabajo tóxico. Por tanto, y ya casi para acabar con mi presentación, hace falta un cambio cultural a lo que es hacia la rendición de cuentas y la producción proactiva de las mujeres en la industria. Es necesario, sería muy beneficioso para el sector de videojuegos en México que pudiera haber estas pequeñas medidas que ayudaran a mejorar, a crear un ambiente de tolerancia, de respeto, de cero discriminación o de cero acoso, para poder tener consecuencias pues mucho más positivas para mejorar todo lo que son pues, más bien para evitar que haya una propagación de estos comportamientos, el aumento de reacciones públicas posteriores, ¿no? Que pudieran acabar, como en el caso que comentaba antes de Ubisoft o Riot Games, en protestas, en demandas, y por tanto pues incluso se debería de cumplir con códigos de conducta y por tanto se debería de ayudar a mejorar esta situación, incluso a través de asesoramiento legal por parte de las empresas. México es un gran país, está creciendo mucho, como ya inicié hablando sobre que es uno de los grandes consumidores, no solamente eso, sino que tiene mucho potencial para crecer a nivel de como empresas, pero aún así debe de trabajar para alcanzar niveles de calidad que le diferencien de otros países que están a la punta, están creciendo mucho más y por tanto es necesario que para alcanzar los niveles de diversidad de género que prevalecen en otros países, pues que haya estos gestos para intentar hacer el cambio. El país está avanzando con dedicación, pero ¿y por qué no también hacerlo con transparencia, asegurando un compromiso sostenido, sobre todo, pues, ¿por qué no empezando por las empresas? Y esto es todo, y encantada de responder cualquier pregunta, comentario, sugerencia. Gracias por escucharme.
Muchas gracias, Ruth. Estuvo interesante y provocador y de hecho sí tenemos un montón de preguntas porque tenemos este tema atravesado en varios niveles en este país. Primero nos pregunta aquí David, con toda razón, si hay algunas alertas que indiquen que una empresa es más propensa a tener este tipo de situaciones. Vaya, como si pudiéramos aplicar un diagnóstico, qué características, o sea, son empresas pequeñas, son empresas muy grandes, son muy verticales, o qué característica tendrían.
Bueno, yo creo que en ese sentido aún no se determina un patrón concreto, porque pueden darse tanto en las grandes como en las pequeñas. Antes he puesto ejemplos en dos muy grandes, ¿no? De títulos AAA, pero bueno, también en empresas pequeñas esta situación puede prevalecer. Recuerdo ahora, por ejemplo, algún caso de algunas empresas que entrevistamos hace ya 3, 4 años en Japón, que muchas estaban lideradas por mujeres y ellas mismas contrataban solo a mujeres, precisamente porque lo que estaban intentando evitar era tener este tipo de problemas. Entonces, eh, pero tampoco puede entrar dentro de ese patrón porque incluso aquí podríamos hablar de otro tipo de problemas o en algún momento si contratan a un chico pues a lo mejor también puede llegarse a dar algún problema de acoso minoritario, ¿no? O de micromachismos como se conocen que también podrían ocurrir. En cuanto a ese caso no hay como un patrón y decir es que la empresa que sea así es la que va a ser en la que va a ocurrir estos casos.
Y al contrario, o sea, empresas que hayan podido establecer mecanismos o protocolos para reducirlo. A lo mejor no sabemos cuáles son los incitadores, pero aquellas que hayan logrado prevenirlo o al menos aminorarlo, mitigarlo, que den una respuesta pertinente.
De momento que yo he identificado como que no han tenido esos casos son el caso bueno, uno no, son varios los de Japón que he entrevistado que son chicas las que han creado esas empresas y solo contratan chicas precisamente para intentar evitar ese entorno. ¿Qué es lo que digamos, el detonante? Pues el detonante en general es que pues no generalizo, pero seguimos viviendo en una sociedad que es machista y en muchos casos pues esto se potencia más o se potencia menos y bueno, en el caso de, digamos, para intentar evitarlo, pero tampoco creo que eso sea la solución, yo creo que la solución es simplemente, la solución no es pues solamente trabajamos mujeres, porque esto entonces contradice lo que dije al inicio, que tiene que haber una gran diversidad para que dentro de los videojuegos haya haya innovación, haya muchas ideas, los equipos tienen que ser diversos y no solamente estoy hablando de hombres, mujeres, sino que tiene que haber una gran variedad de personas de diversos colores, culturas, etcétera, trabajando juntos precisamente para que haya una innovación mucho más amplia. Eh, eso es básicamente lo que puedo decir ahora. No creo que tampoco la salvación sea solo trabajar mujeres, simplemente pues ir poniendo estos ciertos medidas que puedan ir ayudando a mejorar un poco cada vez más la situación que se está viviendo dentro de la industria.
No se está apostando por un apartheid, ¿no? O sea, el asunto es una sociedad un poco más integrada y que se puede integrar de manera pacífica y amable.
Correcto.
Eh, es que incluso en el apartheid, ahorita lo pensaba, eh, si bien el trabajo de las mujeres en muchas ocasiones es invisibilizado, así como todos los logros o cosas positivas, también es cierto que la violencia que ejercen las mujeres también es invisibilizada.
También.
Y en ocasiones, sobre otras mujeres y hombres y sobre todos, ¿no? Pero como son mujeres ejerciéndolo, pues eso tampoco existe, ¿no? Porque las mujeres son incapaces.
No se
Eh,
habla de eso, exacto, pero
no
se
se
tendría
habla,
también que hablar de eso y se
sí,
tendría también que sacar a la luz, porque finalmente, bueno, ya eso es un tema del ser humano,
exactamente, cómo
no de
logramos
género.
no solamente pues, protocolos y políticas hacia dentro de las empresas, ¿no? Leyes que sean mucho más eficaces y mucho más pertinentes para eh, evitar esto en las áreas de trabajo, ¿no? Pensaba, por ejemplo, el ejemplo que ponías del cibertrabajo,
Uh
como
-huh.
mucha gente se expuso a violencia cibernética. México se acaba de aprobar la ley Olimpia, que aplica una parte de ella al acoso online, ¿no? Sobre todo por las cuestiones eh, laborales. De hecho, he tenido casos cercanos, chicas que prefieren el teletrabajo porque no quieren estar en el espacio laboral, ¿no? Tenemos otra situación, aquí David no me dejará mentir. Eh, no sé si percepción en España sea una cosa parecida. Aquí en México es muy difícil que la gente hable. En la metropolitana, y ya cuando estés con nosotros te explicaremos cómo están todos esos protocolos, tenemos protocolos para atender violencia de género y diversidad sexual en general. El asunto es que mucha gente no
No habla.
quiere reportar, no quiere iniciar los procesos. No sé si tengan la misma situación. Aquí en
Sí,
México la gente
es la
no quiere
misma
levantar la
situación.
mano. Ese es el problema.
Es la misma situación y no solamente a nivel europeo, porque ya no hablo solo a nivel de España, o sea, si hablamos a nivel francés, si hablamos a nivel, por ejemplo, en Suecia también hay mucho machismo, Entonces, pasa alguna situación muy similar. Quizá hay un poco más de apertura en cuanto a, porque se confía más en las autoridades en decir, bueno, voy a hacer denuncia, pero realmente son muy pocas las personas que lo denuncian. Sin embargo, y no se denuncia por lo que comentaba antes, ¿no? Por estos estudios que hablan del conformismo que mucha gente adopta y que, bueno, es más fácil, pues escondo la cabeza y no pasa nada, pero esto a la larga le pasa factura tanto a la persona como a la empresa repercutirá realmente, pero mmm, realmente no, una situación es muy similar en Europa a lo que está pasando ahí. Mucha gente no lo denuncia. Eh, Se están estableciendo cada vez más protocolos a nivel español, por ejemplo, existen teléfonos, existen WhatsApps, existen muchos medios que incluso puedes utilizar como una palabra clave para decir algo así como si dices rojo cuando mandas por un WhatsApp es que te estás sufriendo de algo similar, ¿no? Que no hace falta ni que lo expliques, entonces para que se activen esos mecanismos y te puedan ayudar. Se está intentando hacer de muchas maneras, pero aún así sigue costando mucho que esto pase.
Aquí en México, uno de además de que asimilan esa forma de violencia como normal, eh, también está el problema de que la industria no es muy grande. Entonces mucha gente tiene miedo de quemarse, ser
Sí.
etiquetada como conflictiva, ¿no? También es una condición cultural, donde como por default estamos creyendo que una persona que está ejerciendo su derecho a cualquier cosa, no solamente a no sufrir violencia, sino a que si trabaja horas extras le tienen que pagar extra, que tiene que cumplir un horario y no fuera del horario, cosas que están dentro de los contratos que no deberían de violarse. Una persona se queja de eso y no acepta, por ejemplo, una pizza a cambio de horas extras, entonces ya es conflictiva, ¿no? El asunto es que cambiarte de empresa en muchas ocasiones no es tan fácil, porque aquí en México son poquitos los estudios, ¿no? Eso
Eso
genera un perjuicio.
claro, un problema extra o añadido a todo lo que hemos comentado además, ¿no? No solamente a una... tienes que lograr llenarte de valor para hacerlo, encontrar a alguien que quiera escucharte, ayudarte y apoyarte, que ese es otro problema, y luego el tercero pues es enfrentarte después a esto, con lo cual pues digamos que son todavía un elemento más para evitar que esto muchas veces salga a la luz. Nosotros cuando hemos hecho todos estos estudios, lo primero o la única manera que logramos que se hable, que se comente lo que está pasando es siempre y cuando esté todo o quede todo en el anonimato.
En ocasiones, incluso, bueno, lo hemos hecho en algunos casos de otras universidades con profesores que han sufrido eh, acoso y otros delitos por su orientación sexual. Hasta cuestiones mediáticas hemos metido, hace visible el caso y en lugar de que las autoridades respondan, empieza a responder la sociedad civil atacando a estas personas. Entonces, ha sido es una cosa compleja porque vamos contra un aparato cultural que tiene súper interiorizadas eh, formas de violencia y de discriminación contra un montón de grupos, ¿no? No solamente las mujeres principalmente sí, pero también toda la comunidad LGBT, ¿no? Entonces eso
Diría
no
yo
facilita.
y añadiría yo que están normalizadas. Porque no es solamente, ok, bueno, lo interiorizo, pero puedo seguir pensando que está mal, pero no es solo eso, es que ya pienso que pasa esto porque es normal que pase, normal que me toquen, voy pasando y que me toque un tío o algo, pues eso no es normal, sin embargo está muy normalizado en algunas ocasiones porque es el jefe o que me invite a salir o que me esté constantemente acosando para salir. Estas cosas no son normales.
No son normales y ya no son legales tampoco.
No, no
No
lo
es
son.
una cuestión de percepción porque la gente se siente mal. No, ya no es legal. De la misma forma en que es ilegal que yo te robe tu celular, es ilegal que contra tu voluntad te esté haciendo invitaciones. y creo
O que me
que
toques algo que no quiero que me
lo que es
toques.
exactamente. Entonces, creo que es algo que tenemos que empezar a tener muy claro, que ya no es un reclamo histérico, sino ya es una condición de índole legal. Y no solamente en algunos lugares del país, de México, en algunas ciudades, no, sino de manera general y además es algo contemplado por derechos humanos o internacional. Entonces, creo que hay que fomentar una cultura donde pues, respetemos la ley, ¿no? Eh, Ya tú podrás pensar lo que quieras, pero tú respetas la ley. Pues muchas gracias, Ruth.
Precisamente,
No,
gracias.
contesta, por favor. Tenemos
Bueno,
tiempo.
precisamente por eso comentaba el tema de que es importante que las mismas empresas establezcan pues unos protocolos de decir, bueno, si se detecta quién es la persona que está dando el problema, pues existe a nivel legal, esto es un problema, por tanto pues se le denuncia y entonces con esto logramos que esto pues no se vaya perpetuando y que se vaya, continúe normalizándose, porque esto no tiene por qué seguir siendo normal.
También los casos contrarios, porque ahorita, ya para que vayamos cerrando, nos ha tocado en Guam, en muchas ocasiones no tienen claridad con respecto a qué es violencia de género. Entonces, cosas como, nos tocó cuando yo estaba en el consejo atender cosas como, es que el profesor no me aceptó la entrega a destiempo. Chava, eso no es violencia de género. Es que el chavo me mentó a la madre porque no le quise pagar el dinero que le debía. No, eso tampoco es
No
violencia de
es
género.
violencia de
No, creo que
género.
no solamente lo tenemos que tener claro para no transgredir, sino también tener claro para ver, distinguir qué es violencia de género y qué nada más es falta de educación de la gente y se acaba, ¿no? O sea,
Correcto, no entra ni en micromachismos,
no entra ni
vamos,
en
nada de,
micromachismo, exactamente. Creo que,
nada de eso.
creo que hay una necesidad muy fuerte, una urgencia muy fuerte de información al respecto, cómo están tipificados los delitos.
Es cierto. Hace falta más información y bueno, de ahí que se estén dando estas charlas y que esté este maravilloso espacio para poder dar a conocer tantos problemas o tantas cosas buenas que hay para la industria.
Pues muchas gracias, Ruth, estuvo muy bien. A la hora que estés por acá
Gracias, Juan.
podemos continuar, no sé, a lo mejor dentro del espacio que vamos a armar ahí vamos a armar un seminario de juego, se contemple la temática, porque urge, urge.
Pues encantada, ya nos
Pues
veremos
muchas
por
gracias
ahí.
por tu plática. A ver, jóvenes, la siguiente, la de Rocío Padilla, va a ser reagendada probablemente para la próxima semana, ahorita no la vamos a tener. Entonces, la plática con Natasha Skult la tendremos a las 12 p.m. Entonces, muchas gracias por estar aquí y nos vemos en un ratito. Sí.
Okay.
¿Qué tal, gente? Buenas tardes. Regresamos con las ponencias de Devhr 2022. Vamos a dar comienzo a una que es muy significativa. No solamente es una de nuestros ponentes magistrales internacionales, es la presidenta de IGDA Internacional, Natasha Scott, que tenemos el honor de tener hoy con nosotros. Voy a proceder a leer su semblanza y entonces le daremos el escenario. Natasha es la directora general y creativa de Mytel. Mytel es una empresa de desarrollo de juegos en Finlandia especializada en experiencias narrativas de realidad mixta y ludificación. Es un miembro activo de la industria de videojuegos tanto finlandesa como internacional y además es presidente de IGDA.org, es decir, la internacional. Además de su trabajo en la industria, participa activamente en la investigación académica, imparte cursos de diseño de juegos y producción de arte digital de juegos en la Universidad de Turku. Entonces, we are glad you're here, Natasha. Thank you for being with us today. So, the stage is yours. Go ahead, we're happy.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. First of all, before we start, just to make sure, can you hear me well? Is everything working?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you very well.
Fantastic. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a really great pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to also learn more of all the amazing stuff that is happening in this side of the world, since as you just heard, I'm from Finland and from the Nordics and Europe. I'm more than happy to share as well if anyone has any particular questions, but we're definitely going to collaborate more in the future. So I will share the screen and then we can start slowly first to, well, introduce myself properly. So yeah, today I will be telling about We Love Games and also overall what kind of different activities there are, which are all focused on the international participants and also programs. So especially through We Love Games, with all our partnerships, we will dive deeper into what kind of opportunities they are, as the whole focus of this organization is diversity, inclusion, and really creating an overall environment for everyone to strive, especially career-wise in the games industry. And pretty much for the love of games. I mean, this is why we're all here at the end of the day. So as already mentioned, I'm running an indie game studio called MyTale here in Finland, but that's my day job. That's the boring stuff. Besides running a game studio, I'm also very active with the community, game developers communities here in Finland and abroad, as being for the past 3 years part of IGDA Global. And for those who don't know what IGDA is, it stands for International Game Developers Association, which has been a very long time active. So next year we are celebrating 30 years of existence. So that's a very, very well-established and community, but also a global network of game developers. And I have been privileged to be appointed as a chairperson for the past 2 years. And it has been incredible pleasure to work with, well, everyone, including, of course, from the leaders of the communities in Latin America. And today I will be telling more about We Love Games, as of course We Love Games is one of those organizations which is also very much working with IGDA and many other organizations and programs. So we will go deeper soon there. And as mentioned already, like I can't step away from the university side and working with gamification and serious games. It has been, as a game designer, it has been extremely, extremely inspiring to actually figure out the ways with all the gamification has so many amazing challenges for game designers. So I highly recommend for those who even never tried it, please do try. So in a nutshell, workaholic, geek, a mother. My daughter, she's 13 years old and she's more into robotics, but I'm trying to get her more to games, but we'll see how that goes. Either way, now, the We Love Games. So We Love Games is a newly established as it comes. I mean, we just registered as an organization this year. However, it has been for the past 4 years working on a variety of different programs and events, mainly around the Game Developers Conference here in Finland. However, even at the time that we started in 2018, it was already then completely hybrid, because we wanted to have opportunity for developers, no matter where they are, no matter of their seniority or are they just hobbyists, that they can attend and get all the resources just like everyone else at the event. And soon I'll tell you more of the how this actually works. But really what we want to focus is to empower next generation of game developers around the globe by directly contributing in creating more diverse and inclusive and safe, above all, environment in the games industry. Obviously, this sort of statement you can see a lot elsewhere, but soon you will understand what gets a little bit different in our case, as really what we want to do is hands-on approach. There are lots of resources, there are lots of things already existing. We are not going to reinvent the wheel, including the mentorship programs and so on. What we want to do is to really get more developers to experience really with a hands-on approach, to get that first step into the industry, to get that first gig, to get that first, like proper job, to really get there and see what it is, and also to explore, is this really something for them, meaning that particular field that they are interested in. Otherwise, by trying different parts, maybe they find out that they are actually more passionate about some other discipline. I can tell you in my team, two of my lead developers, one wanted to be a 3D modeler and studied for to become one and all that, and then became a lead programmer literally, and other way around. One started career as a programmer and then became incredible visualist, so doing 3D visualizations and generally 3D art and animation. So it's really important to try things out, explore, and see what really works for you, because opportunities are endless. The games industry, all about the games itself as a new medium of expression. It's all about having this diverse expertise and diverse way of thinking in creating games, because they are not just the way to express, but way to engage with a certain content and especially storytelling. And this is why, this is what we do at MyTale as a company. We focus exactly on that. But this is what we plan to do as a We Love Games organization, to really give hands-on opportunities for the developers around the world to also expand their businesses and so forth. So it doesn't have to be just for the stepping into the industry, but also how to scale up. And so yeah, what it means in practice. We are a completely non-profit organization, and as a global outreach, we are really planning to have, as said, like we want to work with organizations such as your own, where we will be having more and more specific content besides annual conference that we already have established. So that means that we are going to have variety of one day, let's say, seminars or one day events, or just shorter workshops and other kind of program around the world, not just in Finland, and also always available online, always available in the hybrid version, because of accessibility. We want to make sure that people don't have to, or just simply get the resources regardless of where they're physically located at that moment, either through traveling or some other challenges that might have, or simply, family and life things happen. So might as well, it's really important to be there to be there for each other. And W, as we kind of, the W stands for women, but it's not just women. We as people, as everyone, we who play and make games, we who love games, and we also of all sorts of backgrounds and interests, which games are this beautiful medium, once again, that connects us regardless where we are around the world. There are no really the borders or any of that. We are all in this equal. So, and this is what we want to really highlight and create more opportunities through such approach. And one thing that is really unique in our organization is that everything that we do is completely free of charge. So the conference that we organize as a 2-day conference in the autumn time. So now in October, exactly a month from now, on the 13th and 14th of October, there will be We Love Games conference in Helsinki city center. However, everything will be available online as well. So only thing you really need to do is register to get the access to all the links and resources and mentor matching and so on. But basically, all is free. And why we want to make sure that remains is because we want to make sure that everyone who attends gets equal, um, uh, literally equal resources, as well as opportunities to network and discuss and learn from each other, because this whole event is designed by developers for developers. That's what it's about. So no business development or no providers this is really not for them. This is more for you, fellow developers, that can share and learn from each other, as well as building that trust and building these relationships. Because when you have great relationships and trust between each other, this is where also business grows and other opportunities arise. And absolutely no hidden costs or anything like that. So everyone is treated equally and has access to all the content. And how we do it, it's very much community driven, and as well due to the sponsorships and partnerships that we have, but only the type of sponsorships and partnerships we have are pretty much practical things, that what makes it possible. So everyone who is in this organization is, including myself, we are volunteering to give back to community, give back to the industry. We have jobs, we are fine. we want to make sure that everyone else has opportunity to grow as well. And as a conference in Finland, as mentioned, this is pretty much from developers to developers. And now we will have more of so in the upcoming event, we will have guests from all around the world, from the insanely high professionals from the AAA studios to literally hobbyists, and so presenting their work and being there. So also there will be virtual booths that if any of your teams want to present their work and also network and show and get feedback from other developers around the world about your project, you're most welcome. You just need to sign up on our website, which you can also see in every single page here. It's welovegames.org, so you can find there the conference pages as well. And mostly what we get questions is why free, because mostly everything else that it's around, it's obviously having certain fee. What we have noticed, and we have been also ourselves part of this when we were starting in the industry, I mean, the creators of the organization, including myself, we have noticed that absolutely every event out there has a certain price tag. And usually these price tags are creating, let's say, the prices of the tickets create own class system, because with the type of ticket you have comes what kind of resource, like what kind of content you are able to even receive, or what kind of networking opportunities and so on. And for those who need it most, which are indies and smaller teams, they don't necessarily have resources to go to GDC, go to whichever, I don't know, Gamescom and what not other prestige events. So we want to make sure that there is opportunity with this kind of program, that you can also from the comfort of your home office, wherever you are. So it's not even needed to travel to Finland to be part of this. And really what we want to make sure that everyone has at least access to this type of content and reaching their full potential with this kind of approach. So really what it's all about is, again, when there is no price, everyone is equal. So this is where we're just like, come join, and hopefully you get really the most out of it. As said, with due to all the partnerships that we have, it all goes to the content. It all goes to the participants. So that means that we are also later on having all the content available online. So we are going to build the library to also be shared with our community. And yeah, at this particular event this year, we are going to have 8 tracks. So it's going to be 2 days event, 8 tracks, total of, well, over 30 sessions. But if we put how many in 2 days, officially 24 sessions. There will be 4 keynote speakers, 6 workshops. But there will be also, besides Mentor Cafe, which is together with the IGDA Finland as a chapter of IGDA Global, we will also have a separate program, which will be portfolio and CV reviews. So also, if this is something just that you want to attend, you're most welcome. So it doesn't have to be the full event itself. And for those who want to present their work and also be covered as well in our all media, including the live footage from the virtual booths as well, in similar setup like here, you're most welcome to do so. This says here 10 booths. We expanded to 20 booths at Spot, and this is only at the venue, because venue has its limitations of how many spaces per booth we can have. On digital booth space, it's unlimited, so basically as many teams want to join online, they're most welcome. And as said, we will have a special coverage of every single team and shared globally with all our community. And yeah, one thing, because we are growing our organization with the various kinds of activities. So what we are planning to have besides this annual conference that will always be in this time of the year, so October, middle of October is kind of like when it works really well due to every other event out there. But what we are planning to do is also we are going to have game dev camps that we will have developers from around the world, also potential, like we are working now really hard to get sponsorships that we can actually support financially the travels and visas for the developers from especially outside of the Western countries. So we are focusing on the global South. We are focusing on the Latin and South America. We are focusing on the also South Asia, Southeast Asia, and so forth, as well as African countries, as of course. We have already established very, very good collaboration with representatives of African games industry, as well as Middle East. So we are really looking forward to have more participation from the Latin America as well. And as this is volunteer organization, everyone is welcome to join, to become a volunteer or an ambassador, or like as to be as active and help us out as much as possible. One option is also to be active with the community itself, if nothing else, just in Discord, but it can be also in person. And if you are, and this is for both individuals and teams. So if some teams want to host with us workshops, seminars, present some specific cool tips and tricks in a specific, let's say, technical or artistic or whichever discipline, we would love to do that. And we are planning to have more live events as well in Mexico, hopefully already next year. So you will hear more about that from also your peers there. And yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you just as an introduction to We Love Games, and to say that, as you see, 13th and 14th of October, so exactly in a month from now, we will have a hybrid game conference, and completely free to attend. So just go to register just to get the links and all the resources afterwards, because we will be sharing also as a conference proceedings material and all that, all after, like all the necessary content afterwards. So you can get it directly to to your email, to your inbox. And yeah, I would love to hear any comments or questions or anything from the audience as we are here. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Natasha. We have several comments here. They are congratulating you because your talk was very interesting. It was a great talk. People talking about the fight is still on. We need to change how things are going in the industry and the
Yes, we do.
game arena. Yes, here we have question. For instance, I know you're also a teacher. You are also from
Yes.
academy. It's a personal. Some of my students
Hmm.
are kind of afraid about ending up professionally working in something that they didn't study for, thus letting pass very good opportunities for them or interesting opportunities for them. Could
Hmm.
you give them some advice about that?
Yes. So let's start from here. My personal background, because again, I can tell from this. So I am a classical artist. My background. I'm a classical painter, to be very precise. So I did my master degree in classical Roman painting techniques such as mosaics, graffito, fresco, oil painting, and so on. So this is where my official background is. Then I did my PhD studies in art history and museology that nobody cares about, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But but the beautiful thing is that, of course, I was always doing digital and traditional art as an artist. I was always having both. So basically, and the back in the day, because I'm very old, there is no the game studies did not exist, barely have been basically games have been something that mostly boys were playing. So I was very privileged that in my family, my parents were very much supporting my sister and me to play games, and we were they were really having no issues with that whatsoever. But as being a black sheep as such, I mean, games were my escape from reality, if nothing else, and being really, I've always been really passionate about. So I never dreamed that I would be in the games industry, and not even thinking that I would be running a game studio, which is profitable and has 17 developers. We are now having two more. We are growing currently, so we are looking for more talent. And so the point is, doesn't matter what you are studying, everything you do matters, and every single thing that interests you really is all that matters. So quite often, especially in the games industry, because in industry we need everything, it's not just programmers and artists, and so we need musicians, we need storytellers, we need literal writers, we need folklorists, um, we need also mathematics kind of like experts, because they need to also do all the data analysis and whatnot. We need expertise from literally every single discipline out there. Um, Not mentioned then going forward with business development and whatnot, but also with the QA and so on and so on. Like we need our army of various expertise to make it work, and there is always space for you. There is always a place. But what it's really important is that you try, even if you think that you are doing, I don't know, let's as mentioned, 3D modeling, coding, whatever it is that you like. For example, I'm a 2D artist in my background as a traditional artist, so I was always into 2D. Yes, I did 3D, but then I realized that's my really specialty is in 2D, from concept art, but also in animation and so on. So then I didn't want to, there's no need. My skills were needed there, and I was really happy to stay in that field. So this is where I kind of, that was my step in the industry first. But um, it's really important, especially while you study, make as many mistakes as you can. Try everything. Don't be afraid to try, because that's the only way you are going to see what works for you. What is it that you want to do 8 hours a day or more? Because once you enjoy what you're doing, and you don't know it until you try it. You really don't know. Same like with food and so on. Do you really know? Do you like something before you actually taste it? So you have to try things out. And again, what I usually say to my students, especially when it comes to internships, because internships are, most of the schools require them, and there is a reason for that, obviously. But really, what it's important is that you really try to find the studio that would be a good fit for you, also culturally and so on. Don't just take some job to fill in the credits in your school. Really get an opportunity to learn from. And what I usually say to my students is that try to not go to some AAA, AA studio. Go to mid-size, smaller studio, because that's where you will be encouraged to do different stuff, to have multiple hats, and really see what you like and not. Otherwise, you are just doing one thing every day during that internship, and not necessarily these seniors have time to spend with you. While in a smaller team, you are really part of the team. There, you're really there. So this is something that, especially if you want to see what it's good for, like what might be good for you personally, try it out. Use this internship, for example, or training, or whatever kind of program you have. And nowadays, after COVID, like having a internship across the globe, I mean, I'm going to have also intern from Australia in our company, because why not? Like, you can do everything in distance as well. At least most of the game companies have been having this even before. So now, especially, even more companies are open for such opportunities. So just, yeah, try as many things as you can, and don't be afraid of failure. There is no failure, really. It's you learn from it. It's every experience matters. Um, so yeah, I don't know how much I answered to the original
No,
question, but
no, no, thank you very much. I have another one yet.
Mhm.
This is about industry. Finland's and Mexico's industries are way different when it comes to
Yeah,
equal opportunities and access for either education or work.
yeah.
Since from your perspective, what strategies would you recommend us to apply here to overcome these differences, starting from academia and also organizations, like Devhr,
Yeah,
for instance?
yes. I mean, one thing that is really unique in Finland compared to other countries, and I'm, by the way, originally from Serbia, so I know also this sort of from Southern Europe. I think more Mexican culture, kind of Southern culture myself. So I understand also the type of cultures, especially when it comes to, definitely there are no equal opportunities in Serbia, like just to make very clear. But what is really unique in Finland, and what I'm also trying to help and show others, because I know how it is when it's not, is that developers are there for each other, and also students are there for each other. So one really unique thing is that because it is, if we don't help each other, who else will? That's basically the philosophy. And companies, I mean, market is horrible all the time, doesn't matter. Like, it goes up and down, things, like there are challenges all the time, regardless now, um, of bigger issues with the COVID, wars and whatnot. But generally, their market itself is in constant flux. So therefore, don't, like, companies come and go, but people stay. And this is really what it's really the most important, that we are there building our relations and trust among each other, and being there for each other. Because one thing that is, for example, what happens in Finland is that if one company is struggling, or closing, other companies will either help out to see to outsource some work, or do this sort of like, how can we be there to, because if one fails, everyone feels that failure, and if one succeeds, everyone feels that success, because we grow then. And because we are so small, because Finnish games industry is extremely small, so we have to be there for each other. And there are still lots of challenges that we are still, even that games industry brings more money as a taxpayers than forestry, which is one of the biggest industries in Finland. Still, government does not recognize it as a real business, and we are still trying to like explain that yes, in the games industry matters. So the struggle doesn't stop. Like, it's this, but we have to do it together. And this is why it's not anymore as a global industry. Like, I would also recommend that, like, look with whom, like, have these partnerships, work with others. IGDA has been incredible asset for Finnish games industry. We have had IGDA chapter for now 19 years. So next year, yes, we are also going to be 20 years. So building these communities, and then together, like your community, like this is beautiful. So utilize that as part of, together with education and other companies, to really work together to, because again, if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for us. So we have to stick together. I mean,
Have a hell of a lot to learn from you. That's way obvious, way obvious. Uh, Thank you very much, Natasha, for coming here with us today. It's been very great, very interesting. I hope we can.
it's my privilege. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking. I said, like, this is one of the, so all these organizations that are out, the reason why we formed We Love Games is that because now we are really putting this more in practice, and we are really focusing to not like outside, our focus is outside of the Western countries overall, so outside of EU, outside of US, Canada. We really want to make sure that this that we are there for each other regardless of the borders and so on, that we do share these resources and grow together, because I said, if we don't do it together, who else will?
We're right. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. And well, now we are going to the next keynote speaker, David Bergantino. Thank you a lot for being here with us. Thank you, Natasha. Nuestra siguiente ponencia magistral, tenemos un invitado de súper lujo. Yo soy fan, lo amo, aunque no lo sabe. Es David Bergantino, un creador muy importante de sistemas multimedia, de juegos. Vamos a pasar a leer su ponencia, nos expondrá su tema y después procederemos a las preguntas y los comentarios, ¿ok? Se trata de un galardonado creador y productor de contenido multiplataforma con más de 30 años de experiencia trabajando con los mejores estudios, editores y talentos en entretenimiento tradicional e interactivo. Se desempeñó como vicepresidente de producción de juegos premium en Nickelodeon, vicepresidente de creativo de la división Kids and Family de THQ y fue productor de Disney Interactive, Henson Interactive, la BBC, Spin Master, Wild Brain, Cabinet Entertainment y Discovery Kids, entre otros. Nada más, ¿eh? Sus juegos de consola han vendido más de 20 millones de unidades en todas las plataformas, con 10 títulos vendiendo más de 1 millón de unidades cada uno, generando más de 500 millones en ingresos. Ha escrito 11 novelas publicadas, docenas de videojuegos e incluso escribió una historia y el guión de la atracción original del parque temático Mummy en Universal Studios Florida, entre otros proyectos. Autores como Dustin McNeil le han dedicado capítulos completos de sus libros como Slash of the Titans, a David y su contribución al desarrollo de la película de Freddy contra Jason. Y sí me gusta, a mí me encanta esa película. Sí, I love it. Y pronto aparecerá en el próximo documental And Also Major Motion Picture. Actualmente está trabajando en una lista diversa de proyectos, incluyendo el recién anunciado y mi personal favorite, Killer Clowns from Outer Space The Game para Television y Good Shepherd Games. I'm really hyped about that game. Otro Earth Revival para Newverse and Bytedance, Dying Light 2, Blood Ties, que es un DLC para la primera historia de Dying Light 2. Dying Light es un juegazo, échenle un ojo. Y este otoño verá el nacimiento de al menos 4 títulos adicionales para los cuales ha estado trabajando con Cold Room y proporcionó contenido escrito. Entonces, thank you very much, Dave, for being here with us today. So, the stage is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I was going to introduce myself, but I think you already introduced me. But in short, I'm here to share sort of my combined experience in both regular linear entertainment as a writer and also in games, because I've been doing both as a parallel path for quite some time. And as you've probably noticed from the introduction and some of the images around me, I have a particular interest and specialty in horror. I've written 11 novels, all but one of which are essentially horror novels. And it was actually Freddy Krueger that introduced me to Mickey Mouse, which is how I started my video game career in 1995 as a producer at Disney Interactive, where I was originally going to produce original games, not horror necessarily, but more for non-Disney IP for teenagers and up. None of them got made, but we developed a lot of really cool stuff. And a lot of the people that I worked with then are in some of the big companies and running some of the big companies and developers now. And I've done everything from writing novels to producing video games to designing. I ran design at a developer in Scotland for quite some time. Well, for a couple of years. And then I also wrote the Mummy Ride, which I don't know if it's still there. They may have updated it with the Tom Cruise version of that. And for a time, I consulted with government agencies in South America, particularly Colombia and Peru, and helped their companies help their developers with contacts and just general best practices and introductions for North American and really worldwide, to tap into the worldwide market of games. And I was running games at Nickelodeon, so pretty much for about 4 years, anything with SpongeBob on it is probably got my name on it as a producer. And in some cases, if it wasn't part of a series or based on an episode, I actually came up with the stories for some of those games as well. And having done all of this, I ultimately formed Cold Room Entertainment a few years ago, originally to create the equivalent of AAA horror VR games. On my board, I had Clive Barker, Wes Craven until he passed away, Mick Garris, who's made more Stephen King movies than just about anybody else, and Sean Cunningham, the director of the original Friday the 13th. And while I was a little early for the VR curve, that then allowed me to transition into a focus back on my true love and my strongest talent, if I have any, which is writing. And so for the last few years, I've been just laser focused on writing for games, which is a very, very different prospect than linear entertainment writing. And the basic difference is, if you want to write a book, you write a book. If you want to write a movie, you write a movie. And then you take that thing that you yourself wrote, or perhaps with a partner, and maybe you pitch it around or find a home for it. And it may get adapted by directors if you're not directing it yourself, but it's pretty much what you wrote, and you can do that. games don't work that way. There's no way you go, oh, I've written this really great story. Here, somebody make this into a game. A vast majority of game ideas and their stories come from the developer itself and usually emerge out of the core mechanic of that game and really somebody on the team, because it's a collaborative, creative process anyway, and everybody has stories in their head, which is great. So that it's really hard to break in strictly as a writer, so I got lucky. A, I had a published book, but B, I was able to produce games as well, which sort of gave me the network to eventually just position myself as a writer. And it's the other thing you do as a writer is you don't write from beginning to end of the entire story of a game, perhaps as a summary, but not as a script or a book per se. What you're doing is you're writing islands of story in between gameplay, and then you've got these layers of the main story and characters, and then you've got the different things like the cutscenes. You've got what happens inside the game engine when you have to stop but not switch to a movie, and then you've got the type of dialogue that happens when you're, say, walking through an environment and you're hearing ambient conversations. And then there's lore, which is the things, the text bits of story that fill in the background of a world. And so nowadays I don't talk so much about writing a story for a game or writing scripts for a game. I talk, especially if you're starting from scratch, you're creating a story world, and within that you create the rules of that world and the characters, so that you can pull out the right things at the right time for gameplay or even adapting into other media without breaking the world. And so this is very much the newest version of what is sort of franchise mentality, where you have to look beyond, say, the best example of this would be the MCU, where there's all these individual movies, but they serve a larger universe of storytelling. I've been doing that for a very long time, and so when I'm thinking of original IP or original stories, I'm not thinking simply of a story. I'm thinking of what world is that in, and what can we do inside it. And that's when I get a chance to create stories and to create worlds, which I do. I have probably about another half dozen games going on that will come out this fall. As mentioned, I worked on Dying Light 2, where I did the entire English adaptation, which was originated primarily with the writers in Poland, but I also contributed a lot of original material and also adapted their dialogue for English-speaking audiences, particularly Western audiences and American audiences, so it sounded natural to us the way they speak. And that in and of itself is an entire other part of writing for games, which is funny because many years ago, when the first Resident Evil came out, and then there's the famous meme, Jill Valentine, the master of unlocking. And I remember at the time going, gee, if they had only hired an English-speaking a writer, not just translator, but writer, they could do a whole pass on this game and make it more entertaining and not stop people with these weird phrasings. Well, that's probably about 60 to 70% of what I do for work these days, is take scripts from other languages and rewrite them for Western audiences. And then you have the particular issue of writing horror for video games. Because, I mean, inherently, linear writing is very designed, which is why I used to teach a class in Scotland for writers of any type, journalists, children's writers, whatever, and I would teach them game design because people don't realize how structured storytelling really is. And meanwhile, these are people who understand structure and creativity in a more organic way than if you're technology based. And so horror has its own issues on top of that because it's even more highly orchestrated and moment to moment to moment in the visual sense of it in films are designed to lead to tightly designed to lead to a moment of fear, a moment of surprise, whatever you do. But games are, depending on the game type, games are a lot more less controllable to give people those moments where they're scared. But it can be done once you understand the language of games and the particular game and the style you're working on. So on the one hand, I wrote a game a few years ago called Return One Way Trip. And that was one where I designed the entire world and the characters. And I already had visual characters and I had a setting, and that's all I had. And then I triangulated all of that. And I'm a particular fan of Japanese horror, Japanese RPGs, anime. And so I was really excited to work in that style. Well, for the most part, it's a side-scrolling puzzle-style game. So it was more easily controlled, and it was very, very text-heavy. So that way I treated it more like a visual novel. And then what I did from a gameplay standpoint to heighten the horror factor is I designed all the puzzles that were all, at least my view, of like Japanese cultural based. So they were based on dolls. They were based on certain altars, based on certain rituals in Japan, masks and styles of masks and what they represented. So I integrated the storytelling and the game design into this horror world in a very, very simplistic way, but it was right for that particular style of game. Whereas you then jump to something like Dying Light 2, and you're more in the film world there, and it's more about action and gore and violence than it is, taught, indie horror, like something like The Black Phone or something like that. Which isn't to say that you can't do horror. We had several smaller stories that were more constrained in the characters that were used, and then what the goals were. And then what you do is, which is super important in any sort of horror presentation, whether it's film or television or a video game, is sound design. The music, how it ramps up the tension, the ambient sounds of your environment. Like there's nothing scarier than a child laughing after midnight that you can't see. And so you have to integrate the world into your storytelling when it comes to games, because that's what the player is experiencing. They're not necessarily just reading your words or sitting back and watching what a director's done. You have to consider all of these things when you're making a game. And then I think I should mention this because I think we have fans in here. The game I'm way excited about right now is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That actually was my favorite movie about 30 years ago. And I happened to work at the last home video company that released that movie, and got one of the original masks from the movie. It was in storage somewhere. I wore it at a Halloween party, and some guys came up to me and accosted me and said, "Hey, where'd you get that mask?" And it turned out those were the Kyoto brothers who had made the film. And I spoke to them, and for about 4 months, we talked about me doing a sequel to that. That didn't happen. And then, that was a long time ago. Well, I liked the movie so much, I kept revisiting it. And for the last 20 years, I've been trying to get that movie made. I'm sorry, I've been trying to get that game made. And my last try was about 3 years ago. Didn't happen, but I'd been speaking to somebody who about it, and it turns out that he ran with the idea, put it together, got the movie made, and they were nice enough to ask me back to write the game. And it's fun because it's the kind of game that doesn't lend itself to story because it's an async multiplayer team-based game. But you will be shocked when you see the game at how much writing there is, and frankly, how funny it is. I had more fun writing that game than just about any game in the last few years, and that's where the type of writing of like lore comes in, because what you're doing then, since you're not telling a linear story of a character going from point A to point B and learning something and then to the end, it's just a repetitive a squad based thing. Well, what you do then is you fill in the world. And so what you will see when the game comes out is you'll see far beyond the movie itself in terms of what the clowns mean, what the characters are doing, and what's happening in the world and what has happened in the world. And that's about as much as I can say about it before the publisher would probably want to shoot me for saying too much. Let's see. I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't know. Is there anything else? Does anybody have any questions so far?
We have some questions here, right? If you want, we can open the space for questions, commentaries, and so on. We have one question here. What's the main difference between the resources you use for writing video games and writing for movies or TV?
That's an excellent question, because that can vary greatly. I mean, the bottom line is, because writing is on the lower end of what anybody's really concerned about in production. I mean, it goes programming, game design, art, and then down here story. Although it's a little bit better nowadays, since Uncharted, things are a lot better in the world for storytelling. Scripts are pretty straightforward. You use Final Draft or maybe Word, but that's about it. You write it. Games depends on what you're writing, and it depends on the developer. There's so little standardization. Probably the biggest standard right now, the one that's most consistent, is I do a lot of writing in spreadsheets, which used to be really difficult, because especially when you think as a writer, you pretty much just your brain drains to your fingers, and then that goes onto a keyboard, and that's what you write. When you're constrained by all these boxes. But what it really means is, what you're writing is dialogue attached to a variable, because every piece of dialogue has to have a specific place within a game, and so I'm more often than not, I'm writing down spreadsheets so that then that can more easily be plugged into the game itself. If, however, and that's for the in-game stuff. If I'm writing scenes, I can write in Google Sheet, I can write in Word, I can write in, I can write in Final Draft if that's what I want. I don't even have to use a legit screenplay format, because most people don't follow that in the games industry. They just need to know who says what and then what happens. And that's then something that they can use as a block of information to then go create scenes, versus just the other stuff attached to variables is much more about voice acting in one-off lines.
Since video game language is way more complex than the traditional movie language, when it comes to adaptations, just like the one about the killer clowns. How do you keep the dread atmosphere? How do you preserve that sinister feeling that we see in one media?
Mhm.
Uh, how do you translate it to another?
Yeah, well, it's most of that is actually the purview of the game designer and the art director, because one of the rules I had as a designer, for because I've done a lot of adaptations of existing IP, of existing entertainment, is to pull out the thing from the movie, or that is its core mechanic, and then shape, because if you one of the worst things always was, oh, you have a killer clown shirt. I don't even have one of those. Nice.
Thank
Um,
you.
is if you just try to follow a movie and then with some gameplay in the middle of that, that's like really boring. And especially if you've got an open world now, like you need to fill in the world. That's why I talk about world versus telling a story. And so what you have to do is extrapolate. As a writer, you extrapolate what's been defined in that movie, and then look beyond the main character and look in the background, and look at the world around that character. And then that's how you would then adapt the movie to make it authentic to the movie, but also authentic to being a game. Because often what used to happen, and this happened at Disney a lot, and other places, where, especially before people who created film and television understood what games could do, they would always go, nope, he would never do that. And I'm like, but in a game he needs to, because it's a game. And for a good example is Nickelodeon. SpongeBob can't hurt people, and I get that. He's a good character and he's not supposed to. So we had to bend over backwards to come up with things like, oh, he's sparring for a battle game, for like Brawl, like Nicktoons Brawl. We would have to, originally back then, we'd have to say that they were all sparring with Sandy, so it was non-violent practice for boxing. Nowadays they just beat the crap out of each other, and no one cares. But back then you had to say, no, well, SpongeBob can't. No, but SpongeBob needs to, because this is what appeals to a gaming audience for an IP like this.
We're talking about writing for TV, for movies, for video games. Um, we're also thinking about making worlds that are going full transmedia. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
which elements or which strategies would you recommend for young designers to follow, designers and writers to
Yeah.
follow, in order to create an appealing world that goes through different media?
Right. Well, this is the key to the value of the writer in the game world, because it used to be that you would have, back when I was advocating for this, there was no photorealistic video games. There were no open worlds. You had an engine for each thing that you wanted to do. If it was a racing game, it used a racing engine. If it was a platform game, it used a platform engine. Everything was really constrained. Now everything has narrowed down into Unreal and Unity, or something like that, which is to say every engine pretty much does everything. And if that's the case, even if you've got great great programmers, and you've got great artists, you still need to know, why do I want to be in this world versus that world? And that's where the storyteller comes in, to really, really flesh out not just a story, but the rules of a world. Basically, we all got to become Tolkien, and create a world from which we can extract stories at different places and times and characters, but we're still within that world. I mean, you look at our own world. My story here in Asheville, Tennessee is different from the story of someone in Mexico City, which is different from the story of, somebody in London. And so when you approach story world creation, which is what it is, it lends itself to then the whole metaverse, other media, transmedia adaptation, because that's the point at which you're not defining a particular character and a particular moment. You're creating the rules of a world from which you can authentically extract things that work better in this medium versus that medium. And my most concrete example of that is something that actually happened that I predicted years ago, which was back when Marvel was making their one-off Spider-Man and Hulk and whatever, everything looked terrible. And even when they started doing things better, the whole idea of superheroes and spandex never really quite worked in real life in a high budget movie. And that's why for the X-Men, they started wearing leather jackets, they started designing their outfits to be more real. But my theory at the time was that the movie that really made sense to make from a comic book character was Iron Man, not Spider-Man. Because Iron Man is where you take advantage of what film can do with CG effects. And Bing, the first big MCU film was Iron Man, because that was built for feature films. Whereas under the old philosophy, they go, oh no, Spider-Man is our most popular character, we have to do Spider-Man. Well, but if Iron Man works better, do Iron Man. and luckily, Kevin Feige both had the vision and the support to take what any other marketing-driven company would say, no, you can only use our top two characters. They said, okay, we'll do that character then. And and then to build an entire story universe, multiverse around that is brilliant.
Yes, indeed. It's awesome. One last question, and this goes for my students, because I need someone to tell them this in order for them to believe me. Do you think a media writer, either is for if it's he's or she's writing for movies, for TV, for interactive fiction, video games, need to read a lot of short stories, novels, to go to the movies, to play a lot of games? Do you need to consume all that?
Absolutely, you can't write from nothing. So I mean, I voraciously ate books and movies and everything I could get my hands on. I think that's absolutely necessary just as a matter of learning styles, of packing your head full of information, seeing how things are executed in different circumstances. I think the biggest critical thing for someone who is interested in games, in writing for games, is that they not just play games, but get experience making them, get into a company, understand how games are made, because that was always the biggest disconnect between writing and games, is neither side could really talk to each other. And especially me early on as a novelist, I still to this day way overwrite. But the attention spans are a little different for games. The way it's structured is different. So the more you understand the process of games, the more successful you will be. Because the other stark difference is, again, I want to write a book, I go write a book. I want to write a script, I go to write a script. There's no way I am not collaborating on a game. It cannot be done. Because a game is a fluid creature until it hits the market, and sometimes it changes after that. Like, I rewrote a big section of Dying Light 1 5 years after it was released because they realized they didn't like the dialogue anymore. They liked my dialogue, so they asked me to polish it. And in essence, though, you have to be able to communicate and go back and forth between yourself and producers, designers, artists, and have an ongoing conversation in order to write for a game. You need to have that experience.
Thank you, David, very, very much. It's been awesome having you here with us today. Very educational for my students, because sometimes the thing about people in academia is that our students think we are crazy and we don't know crap about anything outside the walls of our classroom. So it's excellent for us to have you here, for you telling us everything. This you told us today about world building, about narratives, about writing for different media, and it's been a very, very, very rich experience. Thank you very much for being with us today. We don't have any more or questions. So thank you very much, Dave, for today. Very, very glad that you were here with us, and we are so looking forward to play. We are looking forward to play their clowns. Really, that will be awesome. Really awesome.
I will be excited to hear what you think, particularly beyond the play, especially after listening to me talk, how you feel about the world that they're in and the characters, because there's some really great character work in there. And thank you so much for having me. This is a blast. I always love, well, as you can tell, I love to talk. and I love to share my stories with people, because that's what we do as storytellers, is tell stories.
Thank you very much. Cerramos la sesión del día de hoy. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Muchas gracias a Ruth, a Natasha y a Dave. Esperemos poderlos tener otra vez en otra ocasión. Y cerramos hoy el cuarto día del Devhr Foro Internacional del Juego 2020. Gracias a todos. Aquí estamos en la salita de Discord.